Welcome back to the Prairie Shepherd. My name is Ben. I'm here with Grim, and what I want to talk about today is what type of dog are we creating? What type of dog do we produce? Well, here it is. We're not developing a police dog. That's not the type of work that I do. There has never been in any of my videos where you've ever seen us go through and start the process of doing police work or any bite work or things like that, because that's not the type of dog that I'm producing. Okay, now those things are great and they do have their place, but there's a reason why. Because the audience that I'm catering to is not trying to turn their dog into a police dog. They're not trying to turn their dog into an attack dog or a protection dog, whatever you want to call it. And there's some reasons for this, because the dog that we try to develop to make the best for is a dog that you take fishing with you, you go on hiking adventures with you, and there's certain commands that come with that. A type of dog that's perfect around children and is perfect around, older people. There's types of things that you develop to make a dog like that. Now, if you're in the protection field and you're doing that type of obedience work, that's great. Those things have their place. And even the basics of what we teach go hand in hand with those things that we see in that obedience type of work. But this is simply not that dog. Grim doesn't do protection work. Will Grim bite somebody under the right conditions? Depending on what's going on in the situation, he just might. I told a story one day when I came home, haircut, new clothes, new outfit on, walked into the house. He was very cautious of me. And I guarantee if he didn't stop and recognize who I was, he probably would have bit me, right? So, but that's with a lot of dogs, not just Grim, But no, I don't do protection work, and I don't follow the same command structure or the same type of training strategies as that protection work, because with this dog there's no point to. Now, if I were to train a German Shepherd or a Malinois and I had those ideas in mind that this dog would be trained for a specific job, then I would do that. But let's be realistic. I'm not a police officer. I'm a school teacher, right? So if I needed that type of dog in that type of field, or if there was a specific reason why I would need that type of dog, then that would probably be the training that I would go for, with a little bit of adjustments, because there's honestly some flaws when it comes to that training as well. Like, I'm not tracking down any criminals, even though we do play games like hide and seek, and we do tracking and scent work and things like that. Even though Grim's not a hunting dog, in fact, if you were to hunt with a German Shepherd, it's kind of against the law. You can go to jail for hunting with a German Shepherd where we live. There's certain breeds that you have to use for that. But, we still play those games, those scent work games, because those are good games for mental exercises, right? Those are good games for physical exercising, right? Those are just good obedience games and training in general. It all boils down to the basic obedience of what we teach. But, on a daily basis, we're not doing that. We're not going and trying to look for some types of substance in somebody's house and we need our dogs to find it. We don't need this type of dog to go and search for bullets in somebody's house. I mean, it might come down to it, and it's great to have a dog that's versatile like that. So teaching those skills is great, because you never know when, SHTF. But it's not a necessary, especially with this type of dog. This type of dog is a pet to me. This type of dog is the type of dog that I want to be able to go to a restaurant and he be able to sit calmly in that type of environment with that type of socialization and be successful. And I would argue that every dog needs those type of things, but these are the successes that we build off of, so we can be effective in those specific things that we're going to be doing with that dog on a daily basis, right? We do hunting, we do hiking, things like that, fishing, things like that, police work. Those are specific jobs for that dog. Search and rescue, those are specific jobs for that dog. You have a working dog, you have a specific job for that dog. You know, you're probably not going to want to teach your working dog to shake. You're not going to put all your energy into that command, because why? It's unnecessary and you don't need it. It's not what that dog is needed for. Specific dogs are needed for specific things. So it's always a little bit strange to me when somebody gets on and they say, well, you know, your dog's not doing this specific routine. Well, my dog's not doing that specific routine because that's not what type of dog that I'm trying to build. Come on, folks. Whether you're doing electric collar training, you're doing clicker training, you're doing treat work, you know, there's a specific time and place for those things. Prong collar work, specific time and place for those things. And I'm not hating on any of those techniques that, you know, people use. I'm not hating on any of those systems. All systems can work as long as it's a system. Some systems are better than others, but all systems can work. Treat training definitely works. It works. You know, I want to have a dog relying on treats. Once it reaches a certain age, it should be able to do, you know, its work without having those treats. Those treats shouldn't be a thing, you know. Same with an electric collar. After a certain, you know, age, your dog honestly shouldn't be having an electric collar. It shouldn't have these things that it needs to behave. That's means that your dog just doesn't behave. It hasn't instilled that into its mind that these are things that it just needs to do. Right? So, whatever system you're using, if it works for you, it works for you. But I could tell you what, the discernment within the dog and the thinking of the dog to know that if I do this, I get this, that developed with the dog basically knowing right from wrong. It knows what it should be doing and how it should be doing to get what it wants, is going to be more effective than any training that you can do, you know? And I don't care what type of fancy obedience training you're doing. You have the dog come to you and sit down. I never even understood it, to tell you the truth. I don't know why you would want your dog to constantly be focused on you all the time. It's good for your dog to focus on you and think that you are one of the most important people in the world to it, and that you're, you know, important to the dog. But truly, are you the most important person to that dog, and should you be? There's a lot of things in this world. It's such a, you know, I say the word playfully, but such a narcissistic way of thinking that everything has to revolve around you when it's coming to the dog is absolutely insane. We're getting to a point where it's like you see some guy walking his dog on YouTube and the dog's just constantly looking up at him. You tell me the practical use for that. Tell me what is truly practical about your dog not being aware of the situations that are going on around them and simply just focused on you. You're squandering the dog of any type of chance that they have of exploration in a field to develop their mind as further as they possibly can. And what I'm saying is research-based. It's not just something out of thin air. This is what people have been thinking about dogs. This is what we've known about dogs for hundreds of years. You know, these are tried, true methods. These things actually work and they actually make sense. You know, just because you can get a dog to walk on a leash correctly doesn't mean anything. And then, you know, what kills me is those people who focus so hard on their dog being so what they call perfect to them. You know, when the dog makes a mistake, it's a gigantic big deal because the dog made a simple mistake. You know, one day the dog just starts pulling on the leash once he reaches into adolescence, and they have a complete breakdown because they're like, oh, well, this dog is acting bad. Or is your dog just acting like a dog? It's an animal, and you should respect it as such. You know what I'm saying? I don't have an unruly dog that's unmannered. And none of the dogs that I've trained in my life have ever been unruly and unmannered because of the socialization that I give them, the environmental socialization, the socialization with other dogs, and the socialization with people, and teaching them basic obedience and basic manners. We've gotten so far from this that everything that you mostly see on YouTube or any type of social media platform is basically highlight reels of what they think that a dog should be. And whether you're training your dog for a competition or training your dog for protection sports or whatever you're doing, this is something that we can completely agree upon. a majority of the things that you see on the internet are simply just not real. You know, I could sit there in a short of 60 seconds and show you something and convince you that it's reality, when in reality, it's probably not. But you can see in this 10-minute long video, I haven't really had to say much to my dog. He knows what he should be doing and what he shouldn't be doing at what time that he should be doing it, because it's instilled in him since a young age. He's been prepared to think this way. He's been prepared to think in the way of being a pet for the household that he is living in. And he thinks with manners in mind, right? And this is him not trained yet. This is him with I'm recording this in the morning. This is him with all the anxiety and all the tension and frustration that he's ready to get out for the day and get out and start doing things, right? I go online, I see people with German Shepherds that are completely tearing up their household, right? Chewing holes through their drywall. Absolutely insane. And here's the thing. I was talking to a guy one day. Awesome dude. Super cool. He just recently got a German Shepherd. Took it to a board and train place. You know, and I advise against that period in the beginning, because during those first months of the dog's life should be spent, you know, rearing the dog up and building that bond with the dog, right? So he got the dog, took it and put it into a boarding and training place and had some other people train the dog for him. I didn't want to seem half rude. I don't even want to seem half rude now, but they trained the dog for him. And so, like, all those skills that you could have learned in the beginning of the dog's life and getting to know who the dog is and who you are as a trainer with this dog, you've completely wasted by giving somebody money to train something that you could have done yourself by just putting the work in and the hard work. Because having a dog, you have to develop a routine with that dog. You have to develop a system with that dog. That's why the clicker training works, because it's a system. Dogs are pattern cognizant, so they recognize patterns and they pick up on it and they learn it very quickly. Grim learned how to walk on a leash and very quickly. The first time I got him, I put him on a leash, started walking him around. Eventually, he just picked up on it. He knew what to do, right? A snap, so he came. But yes. But that's what I'm saying. You have to have a system. And to squander that time and taking away that basic obedience that should be taught from you as the owner and the trainer, the handler, whatever you want to call yourself, you know, taking that precious time away from the dog, from the bond that you need to build at a very crucial age is insane. So by the time that dog gets, he's sharp now, he works well now, he works in the field now, does great. But when it's time for that dog to hit adolescence, after you done did this 6-week board training session that you spent $1,000 on, $500 on, you know, after that adolescence hits, then what are you going to do? You know, you're going to have to keep up with that training. And odds are, if you took your dog to go to the trainers in the first place, you're probably not going to keep up with that training. So when things start to pop up in their developmental milestones, you're going to be sitting there like, huh? What's going on? I paid this guy this much money to train my dog. Like, come on, man. We could see the flaws in this. Something is wrong here. I'm not saying these people are just out to get money, but I am. And they're painting this picture like, to have a perfect dog, it has to do this and it has to do that. I wonder if we applied those same, you know, talking points with children. To have a perfect child, they need to do this and they need to do that. No, they develop over time. They make mistakes and then they learn from their mistakes. We gradually build them up to be what we want them to be. And the more that we try to dictate the life of the dog, you know, and not just mold the dog and help it grow into the dog that it wants to be, to make it feel successful by the small accomplishments that we put in its past and the obstacles that we allow the dog to cross and to be successful at, when we set the dog up for success and not failure, and we recognize that what we're dealing with is an animal, and there's a certain way that animals communicate, right? The more we do that, the more we start to understand what the dog is and how the dog is in the world. You know, we can argue that every dog has a different personality and they all think different and they all follow commands at a different rate, which is completely true. But without that piece of giving the dog the ability to learn and squandering it from those opportunities to learn, we're actually doing the animal a disservice. And we're doing ourselves a disservice, our household a disservice, and we're doing the people that the dog come in contact with and the animals and everything in the environment that the dog comes in contact with a disservice, right? So, I once seen a video of a guy with a protection dog. He spent a lot of money. It was like $15,000 on this protection dog, you know. And I'm not gonna lie, I've dropped bands on dogs. You know, I've dropped some money on some dogs, but he spent a lot of money on this protection dog. And this guy pulls out his firearm, right? And he ups his firearm, points it at the dog, and then the dog doesn't attack the guy who just pulled the firearm on him and the dog. So the dog couldn't recognize that the firearm was a threat. And obviously, you know, most animals probably aren't going to recognize that a firearm is a threat. So I guess that $15,000 dog from this prestigious dog training place was kind of flawed a little bit, right? Because one of the things that the dog should be protecting you from, the dog didn't attack. I've also seen protection dogs where they'll bite the person who is wearing the suit. Then somebody will take off the suit. And then the dog no longer focuses on that person and they go and bite the suit. Right. So I wonder what's people's thoughts on that. Because those things happen. And you can argue, well, it's the discipline and the training of the dog. But I've seen this a lot. They do bite work so much with the suit on that the dog starts to associate the bite work and the suit, not attacking the person who is a threat. So I could say in some sports, sometimes the dog and the handler gain a sort of misconception of what's going on, and sometimes even a misconception in reality. It could be different when you're training for war and you're training for police work. There's some variations there. So you have to be cautious with some of the things that people say online dealing with dogs, because people will try to make their training seem the best. And sometimes, you know, it could be. But that basic obedience goes hand in hand with everything, right? Every dog needs that basic obedience. Every dog needs that basic socialization for the environment and the people around them, the animals around them. These are tried, true things that are never going to change. I don't care how many times they, you know, inbreed the dog to create the perfect dog that they want. These things are still going to stay the same. You need environmental socialization. You need socialization with other animals. You need socialization with people. And above all else, you need basic obedience. What's the difference between you whistling and calling for a dog and the dog comes to you and sits down if the dog came to you in general and is following your commands and ready to listen? What is the difference? You know what I'm saying? This has been from the Prairie Shepherd. This is Grim. Grim, here. Yes. Good boy. You didn't see it, but he just ran and then came and sat down. But this has been for the Prairie Shepherd. This is Grim, and we're out. Peace.